So thank you for joining me on stage again. I would like to start the panel with a slide which shows a project which I have been called to. The client had a huge problem with air handling units. They installed 60 air handling units on the project site, and within 2 years of operation, the air handling units showed tremendous flaws. We have looked into that, and we could establish that, first of all, they, of course, chose the cheapest product they could find. You had in the unit water accumulation. There was 20 centimeters of water standing in the unit across before and after the filter section, so it's blowing contaminated water also into the airstream, of course. And we assessed that this, the client saved approximately $750,000 on the purchase side. And within the first 3 years, he ran into damages exceeding $3 million. So this is an example of excessive total cost of ownership because of an sub-quality, substandard equipment running in excessive energy consumption, but also creating real damages to the space and to the units itself. So I would like to start this discussion about do we have to add damages to the calculation of total cost of ownership? And I would like to start with Hassan. If you see this, this example, I guess this story is quite familiar to you, and you may have seen similar and even worse examples in your career. How big is the problem that contractors try to save money, bypass even specifications sometimes? And can you tell us from your perspective as a consultant, how big is the issue?
I think it's a problem across the whole life cycle. It starts, sometimes it's a design mistake, and we've seen a lot of these issues, like you've just mentioned, accumulation of water, even the traps connected are not done properly, slopes, so on and so forth. The selection of the unit is not done as per the accurate weather data. So you have a lot of issues that come sometimes from the design. Contractors in general, I would say, if it's a design, bid, build, and there's a good consultant, they tend to follow the specs more or less. I mean, they always try to, I mean, not always, not all of them, but some would try to save money if they can, and if they can provide an alternative and the consultant approves it, might not be the best solution, they can push that through. But what we see, I think, in my opinion, is mainly a problem that starts sometimes with the design, gets even more problematic in the contractor scope, and then installation, then operation and maintenance. So sometimes you see like this perfect storm happening where like everything is going bad in the project. I'll give you an example. Like recently we're working on a project where the humidity is high. It's like a huge compound of villas and really expensive ones. And we see that humidity levels are not being maintained. Clients are going back to or tenants or owners going back to the main developer, so even some legal cases. And we found out the problem is simple. It's just that the oversizing of the units. So instead of the units being of a certain, let's say 5 kilowatt, they put 12. So what's going on is that the compressor would turn on, and they were using, let's say they don't want to go cheap in that case, and they went with inverter type technology. So what was happening with the inverter type, since the temperature is, let's say, 23 and you want it to be at 22, or if it's 24 and you want it to be at 23, so it will reduce the amount of refrigerant, and the supply temperature is at 18 or 19 degrees C. So it's not doing proper dehumidification. So that's a case where the client did not want to go cheap. They went with the better technology, but from a design perspective, the machine selection was done in the wrong way. Now, obviously, they didn't have any, let's say, ERVs or any dehumidification on the fresh air. The fresh air was connected to the unit as well. But even after they closed that fresh air damper, they still had the exhaust fan, so infiltration was still happening, compounded by the issue of the inverter that was not really doing a lot of dehumidification on the coil. So you can see that was a kind of a perfect storm. The unit selection was not done properly. It's also an inverter added to the problem. The fresh air was not treated separately. The exhaust fan was running all the time, so it wasn't like based on a sensor or on-off switch. And at the same time, another problem was that the fans were on one speed. Like it doesn't even go to auto mode where it turns off, let's say, when the so this is an example of a perfect storm where multiple problems end up with although in that case, you know, the contractor did whatever they had to do. They went with the required specifications. On the other hand, you see in some cases design is really good, but contractor messed it up on site. You sometimes see ducts that are not connected properly, lots of leakages, improper installations. They went with a different specification. Now you have, let's say, a drain pan that is rusty and, like you said, accumulation of water. Sometimes I've been to buildings where it was a clinic, unfortunately in that case, and I asked them, like, show me the fresh air filter, and they opened it was a package unit, and they opened the return filters, and they're really, really clean. They just changed them. I was like, no, I'm not asking about the return filters. I was asking about the fresh air filters. They said, these are the only filters that we have. So they had like a kind of a side intake, and these filters, no one ever even touched them, and when we opened them, they either, some of them fell down, some of them looked like nests of, you know, birds. So, yeah, I mean, you live and you see a lot of different things and different stories, and it's not, we cannot blame only the contractors, we cannot blame only the client that wants to go on a cheaper, let's say, option. If all of the parts of the cycles are not done properly, you know, the chain is as strong as its weakest link. If you have that weak link, you know, things will fail.
Mohamed, in your career, what was the most extreme situation you have witnessed caused by the maxim to go cheap as possible?
All right, thanks for the question. It's a similar question, similar answer, actually. Definitely, the issue here is there is some kind of a attempt to save cost. This is at the bottom of the whole issue. And predominantly, it is an understanding of trying to save the capex. Okay, sometimes it may not be a true capex saving. It could be potentially an apparent capex saving. What I mean by that, for example, there are projects where they sometimes have even a lot of oversized equipment. I think one of the examples he said is like that. Significantly oversized equipment and probably you know, a lot of money is spent on you know, procurement of equipment and other you know, related materials and stuff like that. However, they may not have a proper engineering team or a consultant team who actually look into it and make a proper engineering design and optimize the system and make the operation into a full-blown you know, delivery of the full level of functionality. So this component may be missing. And why this component is missing? Because they want to save the money that is spent on this engineering and consulting activity. But the irony is that if they had a good consultant or engineering team on board from the beginning, probably they will not be investing so much money on you know, oversizing equipment or investing so much on procurement. They could have saved a lot of money there, and they could have had a much more, you can say, efficient and functional project. And at the end of the day, they will have like a more efficient, more you know, sustainable project going. So even if the capex, if you look at it, they could actually save capex. Capex also could have been saved. But the point is, the mentality is that apparently they are saving apparent capex, where in reality they may be spending more money. So this is potentially possible. In terms of examples, like for example, one very famous project, if somebody can find it, it's up to them. Because of the project schedule and improper inspection and quality control, the project was completely executed, and it is in a very humid place, and the envelope of the building was compromised. because of the compromise of the envelope, air outside humid air was leaking through the cracks of the insulation of the external wall. So obviously that means the backside of the inner wall is cold, so obviously a lot of condensation, the mold, and the mold started appearing on the inside. So you see few dots of mold on the inside, but if you rip open the panel, the backside panel you can imagine is full black. So, and it penetrated through the panel onto the front side. So then the issue is, when you want to fix it, it's not an easy fix because it's, you have to work through the entire, the facade of the building and handling the envelope in different heights when the building is already constructed and operation is not an easy thing to do. So it was a very costly mistake, but I think it was not able to be fixed completely because it's almost impossible to fix it. Similarly, in a lot of healthcare facility, for example, they have like in one facility they were having a complete new digital operating theater. But the entire air conditioning system is not properly functioning, humidity control was not proper, those things were not functioning properly. And when we went into the, when we were involved in that, investigation of that project, we understood that the owner or whoever is authorized to issue the project, they gave the project to the equipment supplier, told them we need all this new equipment. Okay, by the way, when you supply the equipment, please also handle the air conditioning. Okay, they said fine, because if you don't handle the air conditioning, they will not get the project. They said fine, we will handle it, and they handled it their way, which is not the right way. Then we went and told them, look, you must have had a engineering team or some kind of design should have been done previously. They said we actually don't have a special budget for engineering. So you want to put them lumped up into like a equipment vendor package. So these kind of practices, also lead to significant paralysis in the project or significant failure. But again, in reality, are they really saving their capex? Maybe not in many times. But apparently they are saving some capex by cutting down some services and things like that. So these kind of examples, many examples, we can talk about. So if the project is executed with all the parties playing appropriate role and all the roles are properly brought in at the right time of the project, probably even capex they will save and deliver a better project. This is what my take on this particular point is.
Thank you, Mohamed. Tamer, in the Diriyah project, how do you make sure that you did not run into such issues with substandard equipment or flawed installations, and how do you protect yourself?
Well, I will not repeat maybe the same stories, maybe, because it's almost similar stories. You find these things everywhere. I believe these things are normally, to resolve these things, it depends on two factors. First of all, when we do designs and when we do construction and we have references and standards, we should have a robust criteria to follow. Because having the criteria or the standards or references or codes as a good thing to do is different from it is you have to do. Because you open the door for people to manipulate. And then you can find the stories similar to what our colleagues and even myself and yourself maybe you have.
I would like to even add a second question to that. So if you are looking at your projects, are you doing calculations on the total cost of operation for the next 15, 20 years when you go for a new project part?
Yes, the answer is yes, we do that. But this is also a bit tricky here. Normally, deductions and savings in the capex and even opex, whatever, savings, it's a tasty thing. Yeah? It's something tasty. You always, especially the owners or the developers, the businessmen, they have their, this arrival coming up. When you see, you're having more benefit, more money. But we have to be very careful here, because when you do savings, you need to stick to a certain criteria, because you need to look to the value, the final value and the final product of what you are paying for. So payment is not, again, we don't do companies and projects for charity reasons. We do this for benefits, definitely. This is what drives projects. But at the end of the day, we need to be very careful is when you save, take care about what you are omitting. Because it can be something that you may miss. I can be brilliant, but I can miss something. And I take decision to save. At the end of the day, I may save or I may eliminate something essential, which I didn't even look at. I had a good discussion maybe with Mohamed Zackariah, who I know him since 16, 17 years ago, about a certain person who was in a decision-making position. And we're just saying that the good thing about that person, he may not be a specialist. We both work in district cooling, and this man was in high level, senior level, but he's not specialist in district cooling. He listens to every one of us, fine, and he say, what is the worst thing could have if we do this? And he listens from different people. And then he evaluate and take decision to do or not to do. So you need to evaluate, you need to listen, you need to see the consequences. And then you go to saving. Saving is not something bad, by the way, definitely. It's something good. As I say, it's tasty. But at the end of the day, you need to know what you are omitting. Otherwise, you'll end up with disasters and stories, same like our people. So it's the criteria, the robust criteria that we need to follow, so we don't open the door for people to manipulate. Second thing is when you take decision of saving or enhancement or something, you need to be very careful, consult many people on different levels, maybe construction, designers, sometimes even foremen at site. They will give you the clear picture. You listen from everyone, then you take this criteria, analyze them, and take decision. Otherwise, you may miss. We are human beings.
Andrea, as president of an industry association who is strongly involved in advocating and educating for higher standards and efficiencies, how important is the statement, cheap is always more expensive? And what can you think about how can we transfer this message better to the stakeholders in the market?
Thank you, Markus, for the question. Let me speak, on behalf of President of Eurovent Middle East, but also on behalf of my company. So I have double hat here. So I would like to make a little note. So and go a bit deeper on the definition of cheap, because the risk is to mislead a bit the discussion, no? In the sense that we saw before System Air and SKM that presented very good solution where they are engineering, so cost saving on the engineering side. So they are using engineering in order to present a solution that is less expensive than the others, okay? But this doesn't mean cheap. Cheap means when you compromise on the quality. And when we go on that direction, so when we compromise on the quality, yes, true, cheap is always more expensive, that's for sure. So when we go to the purchasing department, they have a lot of power to influence not only the investment, the initial investment, but also the total cost of ownership. And let me come back to this. When we look at the total cost of ownership, I saw many studies, and the initial investment is only 20 to 25% of the full total cost of ownership. Means that if you take 100 of the total cost of ownership of a system for 12, 15 years, 20 years, it depends on the industry, 20-25% is the initial investment. So what the purchase department is negotiating is the 25% of the cost. And there is where they are selecting the equipments that will run for 10, 15, 20 years. So obviously here is the reasoning has to be all about total cost of ownership. So when we present any comparison between options of technologies, we always speak about total cost of ownership. We saw in the presentation of Patrick before. And if we go a little bit deeper on these, what are the three main pillars that we should look equipments and design, commissioning and installation, maintenance. These are the three things that I see. And I go back to my friends of EBM. I don't have shares in EBM, so take it as honest. It was very interesting, the presentation about all the saving that retrofitting with an EBM fan will bring to the final customer. The question that I heard is, but what is the payback? So how much they paid more to get that saving? Can you answer this question, please? Okay, 12 to 16 months. Okay, thank you for that. So 1 year, 1 year and a half. And I'm sure that the EBM funds are not the most cheap, or are the cheapest in the market, let me say it this way, okay? So obviously, what does it mean? It means that when you choose right equipment, you are granted for good saving in the future. So equipment is the first design, as Hassan mentioned before. Obviously, here you need to select the right partners, select my manufacturers, and as president of Eurovent Middle East, you need to be certified. Obviously, you need to have somebody that is granting that what is shown in the paper is the reality. So there should not be any play around the data that you are publishing. Then installation and commissioning. It's all about the contractor that we are using now. So we use contractors that are good for the name, but in reality, they are not certified. They cannot be certified. There is no certification for the contractors in order to say, yes, I'm certified as XYZ, apart from the F-gas certification, for example, for water gas, the refrigerant. So we need to bring, as association, more and more certifications and education into the market to be able to provide to the contractors the right tools. And if we go to the maintenance, that is the last pillars, I will say that maintenance is as important as equipment, as important as installation, but probably the most important of the three, because it takes care about the lifetime. So even here, obviously, certification of contractors, standardization of the method used during maintenance side, preventive maintenance, and then before we spoke a lot about IoT, monitoring system. Now the technologies there can help a lot on the maintenance side. So in all three pillars, Eurovent can help certifying, create standards, protocols, with the help of all the industry and all the minds that are here in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Khalid, you have been involved in advancing energy efficiency and quality standards in the HVAC sector. How do such standards influence the national energy consumption and improve the long-term performance of building systems?
Thank you, Markus, for having me once again at the panel speaker. Well, when we establish mandates, especially in terms of performance and efficiency, it is truly essential to manage energy. This is applicable for all economies, including Saudi Arabia, particularly in Saudi Arabia. We need to have these mandates to ensure that we are protecting our market, not to receive and flood the market with unreliable, inefficient equipment. The story truly extends beyond the kilowatt hour. If we have equipment that are meeting the minimum industry standard, that we should be upgrading the baseline as we continue to be aligned with the best practices in the market. We are ensuring that the system will be operating in the highest performance, reliability, and efficiency. Additionally, these requirements will ensure also that the it extends and tied up or correlate heavily with the system design. If we have equipment that meets the requirements, means that our system is designed properly. Most likely it will perform reliably, and even from the safety perspective, the system will operate in a way that would ensure even safety once it meets a minimum requirement for performance and efficiency. Truly speaking, the challenge here is not to develop mandates, because everywhere you look, you could find mandates and standards and best practices. The challenge or the key enablers is how you enable or enforce these mandates in the market. That's truly the biggest challenge. And I believe if you ask me, well, what are you doing? From Aramco, we mandate certifications requirement. This is one layer that we have undertaken to make sure that the equipment that arrive in the market would meet the minimum requirements. From SASO or government, we mandate test reports to the well and reputable applicable standard depending on the component and the system. With this, we'll provide the efficiency, performance, and overall reliability of equipment.
I have a graph here, if it works. And the interpretation of this is we are starting on the left side based on the equipment performance. So our energy efficiency of a certain product is relatively high, but then every step in the project we are losing on energy efficiency and total cost of ownership. The design part, you will have a little reduction if consultants do not completely understand the technology available and do not give the best choice. Procurement goes for the cheapest available option within this design framework. Then during installations, you will experience already some flaws. Commissioning, there is a complete lack of independent commissioning in place, your last line of defense, which would protect you from incurring damages and bigger issues. All the way down to operation, untrained operators, to maintenance with unskilled people. As manufacturers, we have done a lot. We have certification. We are following MAP standards given by the government. How can we interrupt this downward spiral, Mohamed?
All right. This is a very important question. This is somehow, you can say, a graph of reality, if you want to put it this way. So we need to understand this behavior and try to understand, sorry to use the word, who to be blamed for different situations. Here we don't mean blame. Try to understand like where the responsibility lies. For example, in my experience as a consultant, when I used to work previously for some major projects, when you have specification, if you want to the specification is like a overkill specification, 100% guaranteed that no contractor will fulfill the specification. So obviously, that means if you look at it carefully, there might be a contractor who actually understood the specification with all the overkill specs. Maybe he quoted, and definitely he did not win the job, because for sure his price was significantly high. So that means whoever willingly or unwillingly ignored the specification, they got the job. So that means as a consultant, there is a responsibility which lies with the consultant or the people who are putting together the package, that they have to do an optimal specification and requirement, and then insist on ensuring that they receive that specs to be delivered. So this is one responsibility. The other responsibility is, for example, in continuously not punishing the behavior or rewarding the behavior, that the lowest bidding contractor generally wins the project, in most of the cases. But the point is, the lowest winning contractor probably might not be fulfilling all the project specification requirements. Definitely they have to cut some corners. But then we probably suddenly think that the contract is bad. But then we have to ask another question. What if the contract was good? If the contract was good, he would not get the job. You see, this is the whole point. So then we are basically putting the contract in a situation that if you behave well, you don't get the job. So you have to cut some corners so you win the job. So obviously, a contractor is in the market for business. So if you want to really put ourselves in the shoes of the contractor, I can sympathize that if I'm a contractor, unless I try not to understand the specs completely and try to ignore a few things and see how other people will code, that is the only way to get the job. So this behavior, how much you can blame the contractor here. So this is one of the issues. So again, the requirement of the project requirement, all the buzzwords like sustainability, green building, net zero, whatever, all this maybe on a corporate level it could be a buzzword, but it should also permeate down into the people who are at the functional level, who are executing the project, delivering the project, and operating the project. If that that flow, that permeation down does not happen, again we will, in spite of all the corporate level buzzword talking, the real at the ground level, it again goes back to the old practice, whatever the old practice is. This is what people are following. So we need to, I think everybody has a role here to come in and try to come to some kind of an optimal level to resolve the problem. So that means not necessarily the project need to be awarded to the lowest bidder. There has to be some kind of a pre-qualification or validation to make sure that before the lowest bidder is awarded, the project need to be validated. I'm not saying it is not there, it is there. But how effective these things are, this is the question here. So because at the end of the day, everybody is in the market for business. So there has to be a practical way. If somebody want to do a good quality work, there has to be a practical way for that contractor or the consultant or the people who want to execute the job. There must be a practical way to facilitate them to handle job in a proper way so that they execute full. So if there is a toxicity in the market in different angles, then obviously toxicity breeds toxicity. This is the whole issue. So definitely we have to start somewhere. We have to keep talking. Maybe consultants has to, for example, realize and make something, the specifications and things reasonable. And people who are reviewing bids, they also have to come to a level, they have to be reasonable to make sure that the people who are delivering good quality and ethically good practice, contractors or establishments should be rewarded. So all these practices has to come step by step. So if, unless you don't fulfill the proper project requirement, if you don't win the project, definitely the contractor will do a proper job to make sure he fulfills all the requirements. So this is all, the entire climate has to be fixed. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think adding to what I mentioned, I mean, if you look at this, it looks like entropy. Like we cannot stop entropy, right? What we can do is check the deltas, right, between the building system and design and procurement, and between procurement and installation, and again, which one is the most problematic. So if you have a proper building design, and another problem is that consultants don't do the task of costing the project properly. So why would you have a difference between the building system design versus procurement if the consultant did their job properly and have estimated the cost and the client understands the budget, and not they design something and then they come to the contracting stage and procurement stage, they find, well, it's too high of a price because they have not done that job properly. Another problem with the consultants, again, I'm a consultant, so I'm just trying to be fair to the contractors as well. Like the specs that they put, they don't understand what they're putting. Like, and then you have the team that are reviewing this, the submittal, especially because normally you would have like a side team. They would just ask, okay, we ask here for 9mm rod, you have to provide it. well, it doesn't make sense to put a 9mm rod here. No, this is what the specs say, you need to provide it. So this is another problem from the consultant's point of view. So what we're trying to do is to reduce these, deltas between building system and design. In my opinion, procurement should not affect it, because in general, let's say if the designer did the proper job, they have the proper cost estimation, total cost of ownership, which probably nobody really does. Then goes into the procurement, we should be able to tackle that properly. Installation-wise, again, proper supervision. Obviously, nothing is going to be 100% perfect, but you're going to get to 95, 99% in terms of like whatever the installation is being properly supervised, and that's what the consultant is there to do, to check the installations, make sure they are done as per the design, as per the shop drawing, so on and so forth. Now, the other parts are problematic. Commissioning is a problem for many reasons. Schedules, proper teams that really know how to do commissioning and do functional tests to take all kinds of scenarios before it goes into operation. And the commissioning term came from the ships industry. When you commission a ship, you need to make sure everything's working, because once it sails, it's very hard to bring it back, and the people there are stuck. So that properly doing the commissioning, having the proper team. And I'll give you an example. I remember we did the design, it was great. It was a dedicated outdoor air system, and you had an exhaust and a fresh air component to it with a heat recovery wheel and another sensible also device. Now the system integrator in that case, so we had a cooling coil, we had a valve, chill water system, and our sequence of operations is pretty obvious that the temperature or the valve should be controlling the supply temperature of the fresh air. For example, we saw in Khalid's 11 degrees C, for example, when humidity outside is high, when humidity is down, we can, let's say, increase the temperature a little bit. Now, the system integrator just took the exhaust temperature, and they were trying to control the valve based on the exhaust, and they put, let's say, 24 degrees C as the set point. Like, these two systems have nothing to do with each other. But because they're not experienced, they saw AHU, FAHU, okay, let's take this block, put it into the in other cases, the sensor itself is not located properly. Like, it's supposed to be after the wheel, but physically it's not after the wheel. So the BMS is showing something very different. So that part normally is rushed, not proper budget. So this is where a lot of failure happens. Operation and maintenance, sometimes you see that the security personnel are doing the BMS as well. And I think this is where the AI is going to help a lot by having replacing, let's say, human intervention in BMS, where we can get the data, make the decisions, instead of having someone that does not understand the system taking the decisions. Maintenance and repair, again, with the fault detection, that could help as well, but maintenance and repair is a big problem. Even with energy conservation measures, we recently did a paper or a study on adiabatic cooling, which is something pretty much used in our region to reduce the condenser pressure, or the compressor pressure and the condenser temperatures around the chillers. We found that in many cases we have failures. The condenser coils, if they were not properly have the proper coating, they're getting rusted. Even parts of the chiller are being rusted. So that maintenance and repair is also very obviously important. And again, budgets are normally cut. First thing you cut. And a budget deficit, look at the maintenance and repair. I think end user behavior is, yeah, we need to educate people, make sure you don't overcool, but it's kind of one of the easiest parts, let's say, to tackle if you have a proper, let's say, campaign to tell them what they need to do. It's not the most difficult part, in my opinion.
Thank you, Hassan. Tamer, do we need to emancipate developers to have more competence when it comes to stipulating minimum requirements to consultants and contractors? And why don't we have independent commissioning?
Yes. See, looking again to that curve, so looking from the developer point of view, these tasks are managed or supervised by maybe different departments and different people. And each one has to make sure that his task is well solved, well brought. Again, that decision maker at the end of the day, he may not have the knowledge of everything, fine? And again, communication with the solution. I agree with Hassan, for example, when consultants are insisting on the 9mm bar and it's not available in the market. So even if you try to stick to the specification, actually this is not applicable. So what you do, so you need to compromise. But the point is that when you compromise, who brought the solution needs to prove, ask him, challenge him. Okay, how this solution is not going to impact the next stage? Talking about design, how procurement or how installation will be affected by that compromise. Show me the results. Show me how it's not, talking about fat tests. You go to the factory. That equipment behaves in the factory standalone. When you integrate that equipment in the system, it will behave different. If you compromise about something, show me when you integrate that equipment in the system, because the installer or the contractor or the designer, these are the one compromising for a reason. Great, so you brought a solution. Great, show me how. Convince me how. You got my point. So when you challenge those people in that way, I believe you maintain, as Hassan says, these things cannot be eliminated. There should be maybe a sort of tolerance because nothing is perfect. But the word nothing is perfect doesn't mean that you have to go the lowest or the biggest delta. No, they need to show you why they are compromising and for what extent, the magnitude of that, and what is the impact for the next steps. Going to the end users, yes, because normally end users are not the specialized in the system. Normally designers, procurement, installation, commissioning, these are engineers and these are in the field. You can talk the technical language, you talk about specification and conditions and contracts, but end users normally, they are not. So yes, they need to be educated. That's fine, it's a culture that we need to improve, but you cannot rely on that. But when you minimize that delta in that curve, when it reaches to the end users, you are almost there. What is the worst thing they can do? Of course, when you educate them, you can get better, definitely, but you are enhancing. So when it is in that curve before the end users, it is in the hands of engineers who can really understand technical language and who can really put solutions. Fine? So again, decision makers on these stages need to challenge the team or who is providing the solution, why and how. Convince me. Give me the results. Give me the impact. When I am satisfied, that's fine. When I'm not satisfied, no. I have all the right to say no, by the way. They are selling me this. Yeah. So this is my view.
Khalid, we are both heavily involved in technical regulations, defining maps for chillers and air conditioning equipment. I have always had a bit of an issue with, we are discussing about, 2%, 3% efficiency increases, while we know that we're losing so much of these efficiencies down the line when it comes to project execution. Is there something we can do? Is there something we have to look into to bring independent commissioning, for instance, to establish independent commissioning as a requirement in the market? Some other steps away from just focusing on the products and focusing on the downstream side of the projects in order to drive more efficiency.
Well, I cannot correlate with this question because I come from a company that does have stringent requirements in terms of development of design, installations, commissioning, and operating and maintenance. And anyone has interacted with Aramco during any of these processes would understand how Aramco have sets of rules and regulations and governance to make sure that everything is done correctly. For example, when you look back at the design stage, the design itself goes through different stages, from the DBSP development all the way to the detailed design. And throughout this process or stages, it goes through something called value engineering, where people, experts from all disciplines participate to add value to this project, be it reliability, enhancement of performance, bringing in technologies. All of these are potential add-ons. And ultimately, one of the requirement deliverables for any project is to have, for example, a technology report. What's applicable, what's not applicable. And if anyone state that this technology is not applicable, that person could be challenged anytime throughout the course of the design development. Now, assume that we have the best design. How could we ensure that this design will be materialized down the road? Again, we have selected contractors that do installations, and we monitor these contractors for performance. Also, during the process of installations, we have a project inspection department that involved at the site, and they have offices at the site to make sure that this contractor would perform as intended. And if it doesn't, then there is a flag, and everyone became knowledgeable of such non-compliance. When we come to the end of the project, we focus more on commissioning. Part of our requirement, for example, is to have testing, adjusting, and balancing. Just to talk about the aspect of HVAC. We mandate that only recognized NEP certified contractors do the testing, adjusting, and balancing. So we make sure that whatever was built in the design is truly reflected at day one. A lot of I have not seen this in Aramco, but I could tell you that if there are no governance to mandate and to ensure that the requirements in the design is reflected on the system, maybe there will a few essential parts like the commissioning process will be phased out. And if somebody made that decision to save money, he is missing out on maybe a potential 10 to 20% energy saving from day one. Not to speak about reliability issues, because everyone's going to be complaining. You know, you would imagine. So what I would suggest that if there is an essential project done anywhere in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it has to have some approved designers, not any designers, got to be approved designers. The installation has to be done by approved contractors. The commissioning has to be done by approved entities, including vendors. Participation is required. And also we need to make sure that the owner and operators that operate and maintain the system are fully aware of their roles and responsibilities. If we have the value chain from the inception of the design or the idea of that project all the way to the end of the service life of the facilities or the project, we start to achieve the desired goals and results. But education is part, and truly, I'm truly happy to have you all to, because myself, I learned a lot from you today. And I'm sure that the same thing is being shared by others within this room. So it's really a great opportunity to interact and learn from each other. I have learned a lot. And owners, they are like board of directors. They really look at their bottom lines, which is finance. If you can correlate any changes with dollar figure, they will start to have their, you get their full attention. But you need to do this. As a consultant, if you just talk about commissioning, importance of commissioning, maybe reliability, maybe they will not really pay much attention. But truly, you need to link everything to the subject matter expert in front of you. If they are worried about dollar, then you need to speak in dollar sense. If they are worried about meeting certain requirements, then you need to explain in a technical term. But a lot of our, because of our background, mainly standards, regulation, governance, we speak of standards most of the time, and that is gibberish to a lot of building owners. So we need to maybe develop the skills, communication skills that you have, Markus, to be able to really, convey the word and convey the knowledge. This is very important.
Thank you. Mohamed?
Yeah, actually, thank you very much for mentioning the dollar thing, which is very attractive. Actually, one simple thing, if that is implemented or mandated even by all major companies and institutions, that may potentially, smoothen the entire process, is the mandating of commissioning process. So when we say commissioning process, we don't mean commissioning at the end of the project. We are talking about the commissioning process based on ASHRAE guideline 0, that starts even before the beginning of the process, that a commissioning agent will be there. They will ensure that the owner's project requirement is continuously transmitted until the end point, so that the complete project delivery quality assurance is ensured. So in terms of dollar, there was a report published in ASHRAE journal by Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. They say if they will follow a medium level of commissioning process in the building blocks in the USA, by 2030, they will save $30 billion US. 30 billion B. So that is the amount of money that is to be saved by the execution of such a kind of process. So that is to put some dollar numbers.
Just to add on the reality, the problem, let's say with commissioning, LEED, for example, requires commissioning to be required. Independent commissioning agent should be there. I'll just give you so the reality check here. We were bidding on a large hospital, like 120,000 square meter, like a very expensive hospital, let's say. When it came to the commissioning, we participated with others, and I came to know that the winning independent commissioning agent got the project for 80,000 Saudi riyal. I mean, it was in the UAE, so dirhams, same amount. How can an independent commissioning agent apply the commissioning guideline 0 from the pre-concept up until occupation with that amount of money? Just to understand the systems, you need way more than that. So that is always the issue, is that how do you make sure that you're selecting the right entity? How do you make sure that, in my opinion, if I was the client, I would say, no, this person is, or this company is this quality. Like, how can I do this work for this amount of money? And there's a red flag there. And the person that did the reviews is a junior person. They looked at the requirements. Yeah, this company needs, so LEED says like 2 projects of the kind of similar, yeah, they've done hospitals, check. They have the lowest price, check. They got the project. So there's reality and there's what we want. Things like these Berkeley lab study, these are based on like, we're really applying what's required. But how do we get there? I think that's I can't answer it, honestly. I feel frustrated from it whenever we're trying to do the right thing, and then you end up with these kind of situations that's, at the end of the day, you're pretty sure that the proper commissioning management as required by Guideline 0 will not be done for that amount of money.
Andrea, we are working within Eurovent Middle East in our refrigeration working group now on a course program, on a workshop to educate cold storage owners, supermarket operators on how to improve on the total cost of operations. Part of this course will be to understand what we're talking about. Of course, most of the operators and owners are not so technically versed, but we want to make them understand where are the saving potentials and hand them some tools to go to contractors and consultants afterwards and say, okay, this is what I want. Is that this approach with Khalid mentioned before, that we need education, and what Hassan just said, like bridging the gap between what we want, what we idealize, and what we actually get. Is that what we probably need to implement on a broader base, that we have course programs, that we have workshops, which helps developers, project owners, operators to understand what tools, what steps to take in order to come to better results?
Thank you, Markus. I have 2 things in my mind, actually. One is a comment to what said before, but I link to the question. So Education and what we are building with Eurovent in terms of certification program where contractors, when owners will be educated on total cost of ownership, design, installation, commissioning, maintenance procedures. It's needed because you need to create the awareness in the market. But on the other side, I was quite impressed listening from Engineer Khalid, because end users, so owners, like Aramco, there is one, and it is Aramco, okay, that has the knowledge, that has the standards, that has everything in place to understand perfectly what they need, right? The other 99.9%, now I'm exaggerating, but as a provocation, they rely on the people in the market. So they rely on Hassan, and thanks that they rely on Hassan because he's very knowledgeable. They rely on Andrea and EPTA, okay? They rely on people in the market. So, and most of the end users, they're not buying the equipment. So when they buy a ventilation system, or they buy an air conditioning system, or they buy, for example, a refrigerator, they don't buy the refrigerator. They don't buy the display cabinet. They buy the cold that this refrigerator cabinet is producing, because they want to display the food in a proper way and should be efficient, should be, how to say, should be reliable, should be safe. And when they buy an air conditioning, they don't buy the equipment. They buy the temperature and the humidity, the comfort, and so on. So they don't have the knowledge, and even if we push on the knowledge, and this is a need, we need to push on the knowledge side, we will not arrive to a final solution till there will be not a full framework of regulations, certifications that mandates that whoever has to touch a refrigeration system, for example, should be certified to touch a refrigeration system, like what happened in Europe. Europe, you cannot touch a refrigeration system if you are not certified. And I can bring a lot of examples. So, you know, I fully believe that education and what we are doing as Eurovent is extremely important. Is it enough? Maybe not. Is the first step? Yes. We need to set a framework of regulations, top down, from government side, mandating what has to be done. And I think that, for example, for refrigerant transition, a step forward will be to take in consideration our refrigerant transition position paper and move towards that direction. I don't know if I replied to your question, Markus, but
okay.
That was what I have in my mind.
I would, we have to come to an end, but I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions to the panel, or if anybody of you wants to give a feedback on this discussion, or also on the whole day today. If you would like to give a statement or a question, then please raise your hands. We have our colleagues standing by with handheld microphones. I would like to close this panel with one last aspect perhaps, and this is what makes quality. And a product definition, I would argue quality is the combination of performance and durability. We want to have high performance over the longest possible lifespan of the product. And that depends on the product, on the makeshift of the product itself, but it especially depends on the maintenance and how we deal with that. HVAC systems are quite a substantial investment for every property owner. How can it be that we do not invest any money or any care in training our maintenance people to keep our investments safe. A very quick statement from each of you to close it off, beginning with Hassan.
Yeah, like you mentioned, performance, reliability, and also simple. Like you need a system that's simple enough. You don't need Einstein behind it to run it. So it has to be a simple system, reliable, durable, and have good performance. I think the issue with the maintenance in particular, at least what I've seen with different companies, it's again the same problem. You put out a tender and then you get the least, and the tender, typically the older tenders did not have proper KPIs. Nowadays, and sometimes people push the boundaries, and sometimes they push them too hard. Like they put like really hard KPIs together. Like you need to save 10% every year. That's not going to happen. So we need to also be mindful of the KPIs. So important thing for the maintenance especially, have the right KPIs. Before that, we had general maintenance, let's say contracts or RFPs that says, okay, maintain the facility, and whoever gets the lowest price again gets the project. So with what I've seen with premium, let's say, developers, having really good KPIs within and a KPI-driven maintenance program pushes these companies to have the right people. Otherwise, why would they? If a plumber can do everything, why would you need other maintenance team members?
Thank you. Andrea.
Very quick. When I'm buying any equipment, I will not buy any equipment if there is not a service center authorized for that specific brand, able to maintain my equipment. So maintenance is key, and nobody will replace the technician that has to go on site and replace the part or keep it alive, let me say.
Well, when I look at quality in general, if I go into buy a product or an equipment, I must look at the specifications. If the qualification of the product meet or exceed the minimum requirements, that's a quality product. When I talk about installation part and the quality of the installers, I must have in place some sort of monitoring system, call it project inspection, call it monitoring system, that ensure that whatever installed is as per the system or the design papers. When we talk about quality during the operating service life of the equipment, we must consider establishment of key performance indicators, because these are the guidelines where we target to achieve. Without these, most likely we will slip big time.
Thank you.
All right. Here, it's about defining what quality is. So obviously, you have a level of definition. The way I would like to define quality as an overall project is a sustainable delivery of functionality with a level of flexibility for potential future enhancement of performance. This is roughly the definition I would like to say, because I want to focus on, I think he touched upon that point. Functionality delivery is very important, because that is the purpose of the entire project is. Obviously, how it can be regulated is, as they mentioned, proper KPI, proper drafting of contract, proper regulatory frameworks should facilitate the delivery of this functionality. This is what I would like to define.
Excellent, yeah.
Well, in short, all of them. From Hassan until Zackariah. Yes, it is really like that. It's not something that, wallah, we define a certain definition. If I'm talking from a developer point of view, yes, it's all of them. The thing that I need to add, at the end of the day, when you look to the values of the thing, when you talk quality is the value. The value of the things, we need to make sure that the people providing the values are really providing. Because especially when we talk about education, and you mentioned that, many people go to courses and get certificates and medals, get pictures on the stage and selfies and things. And the thing is, we as decision makers, are we really challenging our people how you are implementing these values? Show me in your project how, okay, you have the certificate of X, great. How you implemented your project? Have a face-to-face discussion with him. See how is he using that. Because at the end of the day, implementing these things is not a theoretical thing that goes in certification and getting maybe quality certification or whatever, lead, whatever, these whatever different names of that. It's the real value, it's what you're going to deliver at the end of the day, and make it simple. As Hassan said, make it simple, make it something simple. I need what is simply the value of that, and I need to see it. So decision makers, normally they need to make sure that that is really implemented, and it's not only a piece of certificate or a medal to be put on the chest.
So I was saying sustainability, net zero, energy, are nice buzzwords, but we need to live, and management needs to live these values in the first place and make sure that it's implemented all throughout organizations. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I would like to go on that topic for a long time more, but we actually have to vacate the room now, evacuate. We need to turn around the room for the gala dinner, so thank you very much for your contributions today. A big round of applause for all of you, for the panelists, but also for you to stay behind and stay with us.